Say good morning, happy Monday. And today we're gonna have a little fun. We're gonna do a little contract roulette. Who's up for it? Maria's like, I'm up for it. She's our lender and she loves contracts.
I like when they're written properly.
I like when they're written properly too. Now, Keith, no cheating because you're a broker associate. So, you can't have all the answers. Okay. Okay, Pippa, you ready? Flavia, you coming over? Okay, let's see. I'm gonna share my screen. Oh, I gotta make it large. Large and in charge. Admit. Still got people jumping on. Admit. Hold on, let's see. I'm gonna actually do this. Let's do our participant list so I can see people coming in. There we go. Let's put this over here. Can you guys see the contract roulette? Play from start.
I can, yes.
Yeah, you can see that?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So we're gonna have a little fun in contracts today. Everybody ready? Roll the dice. Let's go. Or the wheel, spin the wheel. I actually don't play roulette, so so work with me. I am not very good in Vegas. True or false, guys? True or false? If a husband bought the home before getting married and the wife wasn't on the deed, you only need to put the husband's name on the contract. Is that correct? Who thinks it's true? Anybody? Oh, but there could be a caveat here, couldn't there be? What if it's an investment property? So sneaky, aren't I? Maria was like, I got it. So you could be right 50% of the time, and you could be wrong 50%. So here's the truth of this, guys. If it is a homesteaded property, the wife has to be on it because per homestead, she owns it anyway, whether she was on the deed or she wasn't. And if it's a listing, you better put it on it or you'll never get paid. But if it is an investment property, she doesn't have to go on it. Correct? Everybody with me? Yeah, second home, which I would consider an investment, but yeah. Any questions on that? Because that's a tricky one. I was being sneaky on that. That's how I roll. Happy Monday. Good morning. I figured I'd wake you. So do you guys have your coffee? Okay, now that you know the rules of the game, there are no rules. Let's get started. Okay. Now, if you have not been new with me, if you've been with me and been on contracts, you cannot answer this question. The time for deposit is based on business days. Is this true or is this false, Keith?
Depends on what you read. State says business days, contract says calendar days.
See, I love our new addition to the team. He says, depends on what you read. Legal hotline answer, beautiful. He says the state says business days and the contract reads calendar days. Beautiful answer. And it depends on the contract that you're reading too, because some contracts actually, there's one contract out there that actually says only for deposit is business days and everything else in the contract is calendar days. So you really need to read the contract that you're actually looking at. All of our residential, so the as is in the residential contract, everything is calendar days, including the deposit, right? But not like if you're looking at a crisp, that's a little different, guys. So you need to know what you're looking at, and you always have to go to the section on time to know exactly what is in reference for each contract. Everybody with me? Great answer, Mr. Keith. Thank you for joining. All right. True or false? If there are 3 vacant lots being sold with no improvements on them, do you still need 3 separate contracts? Anybody want to take a stab at that? True or false? Maria not yelling out this time. She's like,
I was going to yell something.
okay, yell.
It depends on the legal description.
Depends on the legal description. She's thinking she's the legal hotline. Anybody else?
Well, I mean, it could be all together.
Let's say they're three separate lots. They're not together. They're three isolated. She's, you think you need three separate contracts? Anybody else thinks you could put it on one contract?
Only if it's the same owner, right?
What was that?
Only if it's the same owner? Can it be on one contract?
Mark, excellent point, Mr. Mark Shamley. Thank you for playing in our contract roulette today. If the owners are exactly the same and you have three separate lots, but there are no improvements on them, you can absolutely put it on one contract. Same thing with a listing agreement. You can put them on one contract. But if there are improvements, no, you have to put them on separate contracts because they could have different things that you have to address per contract.
But why can't you address all that in one contract?
Because it could get super convoluted, Miss Attorney. Now, you could if you want to get an attorney to write it up, but if you're just going to use our simple residential contracts or listing agreements, I would recommend if there are certain different things on them, like improvements and things you have to address, write them separately. But if they have the same exact owners and there are just no improvements, you can absolutely put them on the same contracts. Any questions? Miss Maria's like, dang, I got another one. Okay, next.
Now, are you talking about both the listing contract and an offer? Like, what are you? Like,
You can do, yeah, you can do both. In a purchase and sale agreement, you can put it all together in one and you can put them all under the legal description. Absolutely. Oftentimes we do that. We'll put three legal descriptions together and we put one purchase price. Oftentimes we do that too. And we make it a combo sale for sure. We do that a lot, especially in commercial, but. Okay, any questions? Okay. VA contracts, little early light math. If the purchase price is 500, the deposit is 10,000. Obviously it's VA, we know 100% financing. What is the balance to close? Keith? Purchase price is 500. They're putting down 10,000 and the bank is giving them 100%, which is how much? 500. How much is the balance they need to bring to closing?
No, this one.
Miss Maria,
It's 10.
minus 10,000. If it was 500, they'd be paying $1 million for the property, actually 1,010,000, and I would really be happy if I was a seller.
I wasn't specific.
Yes,
I was thinking they're getting the 10,000.
yes. So balance to close in a VA, a USDA, any type of 100% financing is always negative the balance. You guys got that? So the deposit, negative the deposit. So whatever, Flavia, poor Flavia, she was putting in an offer on a VA and the listing agent was actually arguing with her. And she says, no, it's not zero. It's negative the deposit. And she wouldn't put in the offer. She says, no, my seller will not understand. It's not about your seller understanding. It's about having the correct.
I said, it's not my problem, it's just submit the offer, I don't care, and she was.
So her seller would get mad at her if she put it in like that.
She thought that would mean the seller would have to give them money.
I don't know what she thought. She was an idiot. I told her to have her talk to her broker to have a broker explain how the contract needs to read, because clearly she needs to take some contract classes. Lord above. I teach contracts at the boards all the time. And this is one I go over a lot. Some people just don't understand that. Balance to close is never balance. Why do people write that? Oh my Lord above. And it's always an 100% financing negative the deposit. Any questions? Everybody good?
It's just a math problem on a contract.
Yeah.
anyway, right?
Yeah. You start with the top and you subtract, and you should get whatever's left. And then to check your work, you start with the balance, you add, and you should get the purchase price. It's very simple, really. That's why you never put the 97%, the 100%, 95%. You should put the actual number there because otherwise that math doesn't work. All right, everybody good with that? Okay, true or false? Who knows your contract? Is TV mounting hardware supposed to convey?
Yes.
But is it written in the contract?
But it's a fixture,
TV mount hardware is not a fixture.
so it's not.
So Flavia thinks it's not. Anybody else think TV hardware mounting is supposed to convey?
It is.
Mr. Mark Shanley for 100. It is actually written in the contract. When they adjusted the contract in October 2021, they actually added TV mounting hardware. No, they didn't. I wish they would add Ring doorbells. Ring doorbells, I was gonna put on here, but I've had so many conversations about Ring doorbells. Does anybody think a Ring doorbell is a fixture? Anybody?
Mine isn't, because I have to unscrew it and charge it all the time.
None of them are fixtures. What is a fixture? Anybody give me a definition of a fixture? Keith, what do you think a definition of a fixture is? I know, right? It is laughable. I give you that.
In technical terms, anything that's physically attached. to it.
Well, there's three definitions. So physically attached is one, if it's attached with screws, if it's attached with glue. But the definition that is used in real estate is if you remove it, if it destroys something that's staying, like, you know, the baseboards or something like that, that is considered a fixture. So therefore, if you took away the Ring doorbell and it removed something, then it would therefore have been considered a fixture, but of course it doesn't. So a Ring doorbell is never a fixture. So guys, if there's a Ring doorbell, you better add it to the contract because it's not going to convey. Right? We all got that?
I have a seller wants to remove the nest,
Thermostat?
thermostat.
Now, see, it does say thermostat though. Thermostat is written in, but it doesn't specifically say Nest. However, can anybody tell me the verbiage that was added? That is one of my favorite things they added to the contract. I say that a lot in 2021. Anybody can give me the line that they added to take away things like that? Anybody knows what they added under included items? That remains on the property at the time the buyer sees it. That's not the exact verbiage. I can actually give it to you. Hold on, I'll show it to you. The exact verbiage. We are gonna look at that exact verbiage because,
It was there at the showroom,
mm-hmm,
and they removed it and left.
yep,
They had to buy another one and ship it because they moved to Virginia.
yeah, I love that. Can you guys see my as-is contract online?
Yes.
Oh, wait, hold on. I know you can't see it, hold on. Can stop share, hold on. Oh, that's weird. That's stuck in a presentation mode thing. End show. That was bizarre. Okay. Okay, now I'm gonna share. That's super weird. Okay, now we can see the contract. You guys can see that? Yeah?
Yeah, I can say that.
Okay, let's just look at that new thing that I love that they added. Personal property, right here. Unless excluded by paragraph 1 below, right? The following items which were owned by the seller and existing on the property as the date of the initial offer. That is verbiage that was added as of October 2021. I love that. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't in the garage, right? That refrigerator that they swapped out for the one that had the cappuccino machine in it. So you gotta be really careful, right? Because of the gray. So I'm just gonna tell you, I'd still, if there was a cappuccino machine in that refrigerator that I would want, I would still write it in your contract, right? But you see, television mounting hardware, they added that. They also added, if you remember, television wall mounts. That was also added. So just so we see that. Okay. I know, special stuff. You guys enjoying my show here? All right. Moving on. Play from current slide. All right. So, true or false? Okay, if you've been with me for a while, you cannot answer this. For the closing date, is it best to put on or before? Keith?
You can put it, but it's not valid.
Oh, music to my ears. Although I disagree with the beginning of the statement, but he did say you could put it, but it's not valid. And that is the part that is important. It is not valid. Guys, if you put on or before in a contract, please call the legal hotline just for fun and use someone else's ID that you don't like. Because they will have a payday with you. Absolutely. It is not a valid contract if you do not have a valid closing date. You have to have an actual physical closing date to have a physical, active, effective contract. So even with the title company, if they tell you, oh, just, do an addendum because you're maybe extending the closing or making it earlier, you cannot put on or before. The title company doesn't know what they're doing. They're not attorneys either. You have to put an actual physical date. And if you have to change that date 5 times, you write 5 different addendas, but you do not put on or before. Are we all good with that? Because I still see it on my contracts and it makes me want to cry. Sometimes I do cry. Jill will tell you. So no on or before. It is not effective contract. We all good with that? Yeah, thank you. Okay. If the MLS says the washer and dryer will convey, but the buyer's agent didn't write it into the contract. Hey, Shandy. Do you need to include it? Shandy, I'm going to ask you this question right here. If the MLS says the washer and dryer will convey, but the buyer's agent didn't write it on the contract, they forgot to put it in, but the MLS says it. Do you have to include it? She thinks you have to include it. Keith, what do you think?
It's in the contract.
They didn't write it in the contract. It's just in the MLS.
Isn't it inherently?
Nope, washer and dryer is not included in the contract. Flavia?
If they have incorporated the language of the listing of them into the contract, yeah.
But they did it.
So no.
Flavia says no. Shandy says yes. Keith says yes. What do you think, Maria?
They have.
I agree with Flavia that you have to say per MLS or do something.
Oh, Maria says per MLS. What else we got? Anybody? Anybody else?
For MLS,
Per MLS? Well, I
and
have,
you have to touch.
and you'd have to attach it.
I agree with Flavia. I think Angela was confused. It has to be included in the contract or else it is not.
Okay, here you go, guys. If you write per MLS, it means absolutely nothing. However, if you incorporate the MLS synopsis into the contract by going at the end of addendas, checking other, writing MLS synopsis, and then including it with the contract and having all parties sign that, then it would have to be included. However, be careful when you do that. Because if you didn't write that MLS synopsis, which you probably didn't because you're the buyer's agent on that side, right? God knows if it's correct. And now you're incorporating everything it says. Right? You could be incorporating about a bunch of stuff that's not accurate. So I would really caution you as to including an MLS synopsis that may or may not be accurate. So the point is, if you want the washer and dryer, you have to write it. Even if they said it's going to convey, if you don't write it on the contract, it's not conveying. If they said the home is coming fully furnished and you don't write that in the contract, it's not coming fully furnished. Unless it happens to be at the Grove and they all have to come fully furnished, it's not coming fully furnished. So whatever's in the contract is what's coming. If they wrote the chandelier does not convey and you forgot to exclude it from the contract and you're the listing agent, you're buying that chandelier. It is whatever ends up in the final contract. It does not matter what happens in that MLS. The MLS is merely a portal for agents to share information. It is not to be relied upon at all. It cannot construe anything. Now, if you say the chandelier will not convey and you show pictures of the chandelier, I'm going to tell you that people are going to use that against you and say, well, I saw the chandelier, I fell in love with the chandelier, and you didn't write in the you're going to end up buying a chandelier anyway. So I'm going to tell you, you better brownie box that thing out or get it removed before you have showings because people get very attached to those chandeliers. Miss Pippa?
Hey, Carrie,
Yes.
Carrie, so you say that even if we put the chandelier does not convey on seller disclosure or the listing agreement, I'm so sorry, but I missed that part.
Mhm. Let me show you what I'm saying.
Okay, so
Write it. Mhm. Hold on.
What? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I have to end my show here. If you write it on the MLS, chandelier does not convey, right?
Uh-huh,
And then you forget. Hold on. Leave meeting. No. I don't want to leave the meeting. Wait a minute. I don't want to end the meeting. I want to share the screen. Okay. Let me share my screen. Not that screen. Can you guys see the contract?
yes,
You see here under purchase property, under E that is excluded from the purchase.
okay,
If you forget to have it come here, let's say you're the listing agent and you
oh,
said
got it,
it's to be excluded, but you forgot to brownie box it out of the pictures. and it was on site. They fell in love with it and they didn't exclude it here. That
Oops.
chandelier's coming. I don't
Okay,
care
got
if you
it.
wrote it out of the listing agreement. I don't care if you wrote in the MLS, is not convey, it's conveying. Cause it's not excluded here.
What line item is that one, Carrie?
E, it's under line 24 and it's
Thank you
the
very much.
property description E. It is
Thank
the
you.
listing agent's responsibility to make sure it gets to that contract. Otherwise, that listing agent's buying a chandelier.
Oof, thank you, thank you, thank you for letting me know. Very
You're
important. Thank
What's
you.
Brownie Box? Brownie Box is a virtual picture, virtual staging. You can use so you can, I would say you send that picture and you get that chandelier removed. And so it doesn't show in the pictures. And I would definitely have them taken down. I mean, if you couldn't get it taken down before they had pictures taken, I would have
Yeah.
it moved out of the picture. And then I'd have them get it out of the house before you start showings. People love chandeliers. They get very attached to those things.
Yes.
They do. But like, for example, even things, that you wouldn't think are a big idea, like maybe they had some kind of draperies that are supposed to convey. And for whatever reason, they think they're going to fit in their new house. You can exclude draperies, even though they say they're included, but you have to have it written here. You have to
Speakers.
have it written here. Oh my gosh.
God, my husband still gives me a hard time when we sold our house and I didn't.
Now, speakers are not included. Speakers are not included. They are not supposed to come. But if they're built into the ceiling, they are because they're a fixture, right? But those silly little ones that are rock speakers out by your pool will blow up your sale because people love those stupid things and they think they're supposed to come, but they're not. They're not here. These are the items that will blow up your, you know what, guys? Here's another stupid one. We had a $2.5 million house. If anybody remembers this one, this was, I'm not gonna say who the agent was, but it was retarded. We were the list side. They had those stupid solar lights going to the house. I mean, how much do those stupid solar lights cost? Not a lot of money. But the agent didn't think to ask the buyer, the seller, do you want to keep those? The buyer's agent didn't think to ask the buyer, did you want those? I walked through, they were gone. And the buyer's like, oh my God, I'm not going to close. Where are the lights? The listing agent paid $2,500 to make that stupid thing close for those stupid solar lights. That probably cost not even $500. Yep. This is what happens, guys. Those ridiculous things. And I don't know if anybody remembers those stupid cream curtains, because curtains convey, guys. Plain curtains from Target. And yes, they were from Target, we know, because our sellers sent them with them, took them with them to Denver, Colorado. And the buyers would not close. And we said, they're from Target. We'll give you the money to buy them. And they said, no, we want those. And our sellers had to ship them back, which probably cost more than the stupid curtains were worth, by the way, because they were plain curtains from Target. People just get emotional, right? This is what happens. So I'm just saying, you have to know what is in here and you have to know what's not in there. Another one, guys, let's say it's a smart home, right? It's not even about the nest. It's not even about, it's about the piece of equipment that actually programs all that stuff. You have to negotiate in that that's going to be reprogrammed. And who's going to do that? Because if you don't, all the smart equipment is useless. You got to think of those things. Because it doesn't say that here, does it? But you better put that in that contract. Because if you didn't, now you're after closing and you're like, I can't use this. What are you going to go back to the seller and make them do it? Good luck on that one. It wasn't pre-negotiated in. They're not going to do it now. And they don't have to because it wasn't in the contract. Maybe there's a fee for doing that. Maybe that, you know what I'm saying? You have to think of all those things. It's not necessarily what's here. It's more about what's not there than what's there. We had this stupid big marlin thing stuck on the ceiling on this wall. And we had a fight over whether it was a fixture or not. Because they said if they removed it, it was going to ruin the paint. And we said, we don't care. Take that dang thing off the wall. It became a battle between because you know how expensive it was to get that thing moved because it was this huge, heavy marlin. But our buyers didn't want it. We didn't write that into the contract because we assumed it was not a fixture. They assumed it was a fixture. These are the silly things that become battles at the end at closing. And who ends up paying for it, guys? We, the agents, out of our commission. Because we just want a closing. But the buyers and sellers are so emotional, they fight about the dumbest things, right? And they're ready to walk because they're just angry. It's ridiculous. They let the emotions get to them and we're the only ones with a clear head because we want to close.
So in the case that we have.
Mhm.
The house is built and has all the.
Yeah.
How would be the best way to go about that? You know, it's like a seller will convey the information or. it's going to
Well, what
be-
would happen, Flavia, is you're gonna come to me, and if I can't write the addendum well, I will get my friend Phil, who is an attorney, to write it for us. Because we wanna make sure, and that's why I have now addendas written by attorneys, I have the clauses written by attorneys. We always wanna make sure we have the appropriate language that will cover us on any side. So if it's a very straightforward addenda, I can write it. If it's not, if it's more convoluted, because it depends on how many pieces of equipment are in there. Yeah, so you have to come to me and let me know, okay? All right, any questions? Yeah,
You mentioned furnishings.
yes,
Furnishings,
super fun.
I've always been told they don't belong in the contract. Because if it's financed, they'll make you remove it.
So it depends on what type of loan, right, Maria? It depends on, so you could say the home comes fully furnished at no cost or additional value, right?
I've rendered it to be one thing.
Or you leave it off the front page and you write it on an addenda with all the things that are included, and that addenda never makes it to the lender.
I don't remember your agenda.
That's where I'm thinking that- That's where I was gonna go, is
Yeah.
I number my addenda, things that don't go to the lender, alphabetical. And things that go to the lender,
There you go. Exactly what we do. That's exactly right, Keith.
I've had them ask, where's number 2? Well, it's not a lender addendum.
Yep,
Yeah, I want it.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
tried to retract what was in there,
yep.
and the seller wasn't happy, or the buyer, I don't remember if the seller or buyer. But they weren't happy, and I'm like, don't worry about it, it's just a financial thing.
Exactly. See, we don't want that. So that's why we make sure that we either, if it's okay, because it's at the Grove where all the homes are fully furnished, that's okay. But if it's not, we put it on a separate addenda that does not go to the. And I love that. ABC, 1, 2, 3. That's a great idea. Okay, any questions on that? That's a great addition. Thank you for that. Okay, moving,
Barry,
yes.
should we put, if it were to be something listed in section D, that's gonna be excluded, should we
Uh-huh.
put it on an addendum to not have the contract in conflict potentially? Like if
No,
it's drapes?
no, it needs to be right there because that is, it's not that it's in conflict, it's actually saying it normally would come, except if it's written in E and therefore it won't. So it needs to be on that page. So you see that it's not in conflict, it's showing that it's being excluded. Because it says unless if shown in paragraph E. So,
Okay, got you. Yeah, it does.
yep. Okay, if a contract is subject to a lease, how many days does the listing agent have to give the buyer the lease? Anybody? Come on, how many days? I'll give you a hint. It's the same amount of days that the buyer has to review it.
Great.
No,
I think it's 15. isn't it?
no.
I don't do leases.
I know, me neither. I hate them. Anybody? But if it's subject to, so let's say you're selling an investment property that has a renter in it. You have to have the lease handy to give it to them, right? And you have how many days to give that lease to them?
7?
It'd be 5.
5. Thank you, Mark. 5 days. You have 5 days to get it to the listing agent. The buyer has 5 days to review it. And if they don't put in writing that they're comfortable with it, then they have waived it, right? If they put in writing that they don't want or don't feel comfortable with it, they actually have the right to get out of the contract. That's why it's contingent upon. It's an actual contingency. Because if they're not comfortable, remember, you have a bundle of rights that come with ownership. And you are getting only a portion of those bundle of rights when it's leased, because you don't have the right of usage, right? The people who are renting it do. So you are now subject to their usage rights, right? So if you don't feel comfortable with that, or the amount of money they're going to give you, or the time frame that they're going to be in there, or all of the things that come with that, good morning, Mr. Hallister. Then what will happen is you can actually say, no, I do not agree with the lease and get your money back. Here's a question that's not on there. Does text message constitute written notification?
No.
Mr. Keith, not anymore. Sad to say, I really missed that, but yes, that has also changed. That was the bad change. If there was a bad change in October, that was the bad change. No more written constitution with text messaging. All right, moving on. Or not. Okay. If the contract says, Maria will love this, may not assign, and the buyer needs to add another person to the contract for the loan, can they?
Yes.
He says yes. Anyone else want to take a gander? You wrote may not assign. Can you add someone to the contract because you need to do it for the loan? Everyone's too scared to answer me today. What's going on? Am I scary today?
Anybody said yes yet?
Yeah, Keith said yes. You think yes?
I think so, yeah.
I'm so sorry, guys. You're wrong.
Why not? But it's
Because-
not, but you're not assigning.
Yeah, assigning means any changes at all, actually.
Alright.
So if you
So I
want,
read that then, I wouldn't have thought that.
I know, and
Because
that's
if
why I
I'm
brought it up.
married And I want to put my wife on it, I can't
No.
imagine that that's assignation.
I know you can't imagine that it would be, right? But it is because assigning is any change at all to how the contract is written. So if you want to have the right to add someone like your wife, to add someone like a co-borrower, you need to say may assign but not be released from liability. That's why I always
That's it.
say,
Yeah, that's it.
yeah,
There are the three options.
Yeah.
yeah, but you don't want to pick the first one, may assign and thereby be released. No one's going to agree to that. You want to pick the second one, may assign and not be released from liability.
Technically, trust, you can't change the name to.
A trust,
Yeah.
an LLC, you can't do anything. When you say may not assign, it means may not make any changes. Now, I'm going to tell you the good news. Most agents are not very bright and they don't know that. They don't know contracts and usually people make changes to this thing all the time and they have no idea what they're doing. So you usually get away with it.
What about the name?
Yeah, but the point is, let's say we did may not assign and then we're just adding people, we just ignored the whole fact that the contract was not assignable. Right? So we just went past what the actual buyer and seller agreed to. Because we, the agents, have no idea what's going on. So if there ever became a lawsuit based on that contract, guess who could now get in trouble? We, the agents, for doing our job incorrectly. This is where we, the agents, have to really understand what's going on. If we start doing things incorrectly, we could get in trouble. So we have to really understand contracts. Now we could say it was the seller's fault, the buyer's fault. I'm going to blame everybody, but at the end of the day, we really have to have a better understanding what assignability is. Now, more importantly, why we have to understand that is because if we're in not assignable contract and we want to make a change and they say you can't, it's may not assign. Now you're in trouble. That's really where, more importantly, it becomes an issue, right? So I'm going to tell you, I would always err on the side of saying may assign and not be released from liability, and simply tell the agent on the other side they may want to put it in a family trust. They may, we don't know, right? Because they'll freak out when you do that. They have no idea. But I'm going to tell you, or you could put and or assigns, but that's going to freak people out. If you say Keith Calk and or assigns, that is therefore making it assignable, right? However, you're now freaking everybody out. That's a very, attorney thing to do. And people start going, oh my gosh, is this a real person? What are they trying to say? So I would simply suggest going with the second one, may assign and not be released from liability, and letting the listing agent know they may want to put it in a trust. We don't know. They could, right? It just gives your borrower or your buyer the most options. Recommendation. Any questions on that?
Yes, Carrie, can a lender deny the loan based on that or try to deny it?
Based on assignability?
Well, if you needed the person, I'm assuming if you couldn't get it rectified and they needed the person added to the loan.
Yeah, what Maria is saying, if you need somebody to be added to the loan because they can't get approved by themselves and it's not assigned and the seller won't change that, then they'll get denied because they couldn't add them.
Unless they just wanted to be on the deed, they could still be on the loan and not be on the deed,
Well,
so I don't.
if they could just change them to the loan and not add them to the deed, most people
But
don't
then they
like to
still
do
have
that.
deed of closing. So
Yeah.
It doesn't change the title, I don't, it would. just-
It depends. It's like I would suggest if you have at all the option, may assign and not be released from liability. You can get people added to your loan and not on the deed for sure. You could totally do that. People have done that before, but a lot of people don't like that idea either.
I don't like that, I don't recommend it.
I don't recommend it either. You take all liability and you get nothing. Thanks for playing. Have a good day. But that can be done. Yeah, if they would do it. I think you have worse chances of getting someone to co-sign though.
Yeah.
Good luck. Yeah, but yes, to your point, there you have it. Questions? Good on that one? Okay, true or false? Oh, you know, the financing contingency. Under financing, if you selected A, cash, does that mean your buyer cannot get a loan? Anybody? What do you think, Shandy? Shandy's like, dang it, did you have to pick on me? Why did I sit on this?
Exactly what I'm thinking.
I know, that's why I picked on you. So what do you think, Keith?
They can take a loan, but will be no contingency.
Okay, they saved you. You can get a loan, you just don't have a contingent. And you know what? I love that change that they made. That was great because it always said that. It just said it in a very convoluted way before. Now it just says this is cash. It's not contingent on anything. That's what it was before, just that they said a lot of words.
Everybody says the loan is cash.
Yeah,
All you
exactly.
do is give it a contingency on giving it.
Yeah, if you can't get it, guess what? You'll lose your deposit.
You have to.
Yeah, we expect you to close with cash. We don't care where the cash comes from. And if you can't close with cash, your deposit is hard. Sorry, you lost it. That's all it really means, guys. Now, here's a question, and this has come up. If the buyer has selected cash, can the seller refuse an appraiser to access the property? This has happened on a number of occasions, believe it or not. Okay. What do you guys think?
They cannot.
You can say no, because you can still have an appraisal in the cash.
So some people say no. Does anybody think the seller can? I've had sellers try to not let appraisers on a property because they say this is a cash deal. What do you think, Flavia? Flavia's staring at it going. So if you've selected cash and the seller, now an appraiser is trying to get the property, the seller says, no, this is a cash deal, no appraiser. Can that happen?
He cannot refuse the access, but.
He cannot refuse access. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
What, anybody think he can refuse access? Anyone's too scared to answer me? I have a lot of scared people on this call. I know it. It's okay. So the reality is an appraiser is an inspection. That's a type of inspection. And the buyer is allowed to inspect the property at any time. So no, the seller cannot refuse. Not even just during due diligence. They are allowed to inspect the property throughout. Section 22. The contingency that is contingent on that is a different 15.7.5 depends, but they can still inspect the property. They have a right to inspect. Yep, exactly. Yep, section 26. Okay, very good. Okay, you guys having fun? I'm having some fun today. Okay. If a buyer has selected B under financing, but they left the percentage blank, so they said based upon the buyer's interest rate, prevailing rate, right? Then they were first approved at 6.75, but suddenly they went up to 12%. Are they able to get out under the financing contingency?
No. Oh,
Why do you think it depends, Keith?
Because if the bank will give them a loan, it's still.
They could get a loan, but it's 12%.
They may not like it.
But they're gonna like it, they'll not
Yeah,
like
let's
it.
keep it there.
Right, guys, this has happened in my brokerage, I will tell you. The reality is you have to fill that in. Do not leave the prevailing rate based on the buyer's creditworthiness. The buyer's creditworthiness can change and does And that, if you want to protect your buyer, remember all those little lines under that financing contingency are your options and ways to protect your buyer. And if you don't fill them in, you're not protecting your buyer. So filling that line in gives you one other way to protect your buyer. So that way, if their prevailing rate goes up to 12% based on their creditworthiness, you can now get out using the financing contingency. You don't need a declination from the lender. You just show that they're approved at 12% and you capped them at 6.75 or 7%. And now they can get out and get their money back. Everybody good with that? So please fill that line in. I still see that blank so often. Not picking on anybody. Okay. So if the loan approval period ended March 5th and the closing was March 8th, can the seller send a release and cancellation on March 6th? What do you think, Pippa?
Say no.
Pippa says no. What do you think, Keith?
Is the loan approved? I'm not sure.
We don't know.
Well, they only had to the fifth, so I would say yes, they can cancel the contract.
But the closing is the 8th.
It doesn't matter.
Why can they
It
cancel?
only has to be approved.
Or it doesn't. But if it's not approved, they could just,
It
we
doesn't have-
assume cash.
It has to be clear to close, but there has to be.
Well, if it's not approved, we just assume they're cash, don't we? If we don't receive approval, we have to assume they're cash. They just don't have a contingency anymore, right?
Right. Once that,
Approval period ends.
is gone.
That's a contingency. So they'll lose their money if they don't close because now they don't have a contingency. Maria's onto something. She's onto a 3-day thing. What is the 3-day thing? Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
They had, if they don't do it, is it?
To
within-
provide full approval,
What, Liz?
that they have to provide the full approval.
Actually, they don't have to put, all right, I'll help you guys. This is getting painful. The buyer's agent, it's really supposed to be the buyer, has to put in writing by the end of the loan approval period, whether or not the buyer has received loan approval. It doesn't have to say, it doesn't matter. They could say they've received loan approval and they're going to continue. They have not received loan approval, but they plan to continue. But they must use those words, whether or not they've received loan approval. If they have not sent that in writing by the end of the loan approval period, the seller has 3 days they can cancel the contract. That is my favorite thing for this listing agent and the seller, of course, that was changed in October 2021. It has given the seller some power in the contract. So if the seller had a backup contract, and this happened all the time, sellers would say, listing agent will call, how does the seller get out of the contract? Well, if you do not get an email from or in writing from the buyer's agent, it's supposed to be from the buyer, can't be from the lender saying all sorts of blah, 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 blah. It has to be the words, whether or not they've received loan approval. And whether they plan to continue or not is irrelevant. They have to say if they've received loan approval, they plan to continue. They have not received loan approval, but they plan to continue. You have to get those words. And if you have not received them by the end of the loan approval period, so in this case, March 5th, the seller can now cancel the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. With a release and cancellation. That is in your contract. You guys want to take a peek at it? Oh, wait, hold on. And show. Yes, it would. Can you guys all see the contract? Everybody see the contract online?
Yes.
Okay, let's
I
go.
can
there.
see it. Okay.
You can see, you don't like it, but you can see, here it is. Buyer fails to deliver timely written notice provided in 8B above to the seller prior to the expiration of the loan approval period. I'm on line 21. Then the buyer shall proceed with the contract right here. Let me move this over. Right here. Oh, goodness. The seller may elect to terminate this contract by delivering written notice to the buyer. We have 3 days after the expiration of the loan period. There it is. See, they have to say whether or not they have obtained loan approval within the loan approval period. Line 115. You have to read the whole section right there. Everybody see that?
What section is it?
We're right here on this, it's, from lines, you'd want to read from lines 115 all the way through lines 124. Yep. A lot of people don't know that.
Say who has to give it?
Buyer, right here, it says, if within the loan approval period buyer obtains loan approval, buyer shall notify the same in writing. It actually starts 111. And if they have not, they have to tell them within the loan approval period. And then it continues to say, if they have not delivered written notice, then the seller has 3 days, right here, but it says
So that
buyer.
Even if I were to say.
It says buyer. Buyer.
So-
So the
but
list,
if
that's the
the
buyer's
buyer's
agent
agent-
can do it in behalf of the buyer, but the lender cannot do it. It has to be the buyer. So the buyer's agent is doing it on behalf of the buyer. Everybody with me on that one? Nobody likes it, but it is the way it is. And if you do that, the seller would then have to return the deposit. See, it says that they would get their money back. Because we would have to assume, to your point, Keith, that it would have closed cash. Because once we don't know whether or not their contingency has been waived, so they're assumed a cash closing now, right? However, they still have the right to cancel them. So your buyers are moving down here in a moving truck and they receive a release and cancellation. And now they're moving in with you. Not super great, guys. Did everybody know that? I hope you did. Everybody? I had a lot of agents do that.
No, I'm just saying, I think generally speaking, people don't.
I'm gonna tell you, I had a situation, it was horrible. We were on the list side and the buy side. And my list agent had another backup contract that was not with us. And I couldn't tell my buyer's agent, who was my side, that she had to notify in writing because I have to be an independent third party, right? It was horrible. And I just said to my agent, you know the contract really well, right? Follow your contract. Pay attention to the contract. But I can't say anything more than that, right? What can I say? No, we did it. She did it right. Thank God. And of course, the listing agent wanted to help her, but couldn't, right? Because we're representing the seller. He was representing the seller. So he's like, but Carrie, you can't tell her either. But of course I couldn't. Thank God she did it right. My God, it was so close. It was so awful. That was the worst. Because you know what's going to happen. I already told the listing agent. He knew. The seller was waiting to see because he wanted to get out and get the backup contract. It's horrifying. Phew. That was a close call. I know, Mr. Alejandro. Okay. True or false, guys? The section in regards to special assessments has to do with homeowners association. What do you think, Shandy? She's like, dang, why does she keep calling on me? It's because it's fun and you're right there. What do you think? Special assessments that the buyer will pay half before closing and then the seller will pay after, or the seller will pay all beforehand. You know that one? You have to make that election. And people get all, you know, oh, you picked the wrong one, and then, you know, it's really fun. And I always like to say that it depends on what side you're on, right? If I'm on the sell side, I want the buyer to pay the other half after they close. And if I'm on the buy side, I want the seller to pay everything before closing. Right.
I feel like the special assessments are in addition to the homeowners association.
So they are, the homeowners association is part of it. Is that what you're saying?
It's an addition to, no. Not part of it.
So the homeowners association, you think this is false?
Yeah.
Flavia, is it true or false? What do you think, Keith? True or false?
It's false. With the caveat that it is more than a homeowner association.
What do you guys think online? Anyone want to say anything? The section on special assessments, that the buyer will pay, seller will pay to closing and the buyer will pay the rest after, or the seller will pay everything before closing. You know that section?
Would it be if the special assessment came from the homeowners association, but it isn't like the regular staple of the homeowners association dues?
Thank you, April.
You have to check B, no? If it's that
Actually,
related.
I love that we're doing this and I love that you guys are asking. Here we are, special assessments. Let's go right down to it. It says, does not include condominium or homeowners association. Has nothing to do with that. And I wanted to bring this up because nobody understands what the heck it has anything to do about. Yeah.
taxi.
Exactly. Or let's say the county or whatever is widening the road. So they put a special assessment on all the homeowners. That's what those special assessments are. They're very unusual. Putting in water where there was no water, things like that. So guys, there's usually not a lot of these special assessments. And this is why you need to force that issue, because if there are a special assessment, you need to know about that. And let me tell you that homeowner, they know that there's a special assessment. So that's why we can't just assume, oh, just pick this one or that one, Christmas tree this. If you say sellers should pay assessments in full and they say, oh, you picked the wrong one, I always like to say, no, is there something you're not telling us?
When we moved down here, we got a contract on the house out middle of November. December 10th or so, we got a letter from the county, from the municipality saying that we are going to be installing water on Mill Street.
There you go.
First thing we did was take that right to the agent
Yeah.
and said, here you go, wasn't there before, look at the date.
And you knew
Disclosure.
lack of disclosure. So this is my point, guys. Everybody thinks that this is the homeowners association or condominium association. It has nothing to do with that. It's like water being added, widening a street. It's usually governmental stuff, making it better, making the area better, widening roads and things like that. Everybody clear on that?
Yes.
CDD is different. CDD is on your taxes. It's a different thing totally. Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
Carrie, what if the homeowners association has a special assessment, like for a
That's
roof or
different.
something like that?
Homeowners association would be on the homeowners association addenda. And that
they
they would
don't-
have to notify, and that's would be on the second page of the homeowners association. That's what the second page is about. And they would have to also put that in there, and that's why you have to get all the documents in the homeowners association. And I have a question about that, but they have to give you all of those documents. So yes, to your point, if there's a special assessment, that should be notified as well. But that is part of the homeowners association addenda, not part of that special assessment section. But great question.
Thank you.
No, thank you for asking. All right. The energy brochure, true or false, is expected to be included with all contracts.
True.
Thank you. Thank you, Shandy. Yes, it says it in the contract, guys. So you should be sending it with every buyer's contract. Now, it doesn't have to go to the listing agent, but it needs to go to the buyer. It says in the contract, the buyer received it. Good. I'm glad you haven't signed it. I always did too.
Right?
Yeah, just one time.
Okay.
Lead-based paint, true or false, is for all homes pre-1976. Thank you, Keith. 1978. I tried to be tricky. You got me. Okay. Once the homeowners association addenda, this is for you, April, is signed and all documents are delivered, a 3-day contingency opens for the buyer, even if it's the day of closing. Who believes that? True or false? You think it's false? I got true and false. Why do you think it's false?
Because it all ends in closing.
Actually, it's true. So if it was closing, it would halt closing and they could get out of closing. And investors used to do that all the time. They would put in offers on multiple homes and wait to decide what they wanted to do. And then they would use the homeowners association or condominium association docs to say, oh, you know what? I don't feel comfortable with this. Get out of the contract.
Just make sure it's delivered before.
Well, that's why I always say, make sure you put all your documents required in supplemental docs and you make them sign the homeowners association doc saying that they've received them at the time of contract, which starts your 3-day right of rescission. So to your point, April, on those documents, if you didn't give full disclosure about the fact that there was some kind of a special assessment, could that reopen your 3-day right of rescission? That's a question an attorney might try to, right, Flavia? An attorney might try to argue that because you didn't give full disclosure on all the documents. So that's where I would be careful if there was a disclosure that they didn't give. It could possibly, I'm not an attorney, I don't play one on TV, but it could possibly maybe reopen your 3-day right of rescission if the documents were not fully furnished. Ooh, be careful with that. Yep. Okay, in an as-is contract, as long as the agent has gotten an addenda to the listing agent by the end of the inspection period, the buyer is safe. So the buyer wants to have, polybutylene pipes changed and a GFI fixed. And she got it in by day 5, the inspection period ends day 5. She's good, right? Who thinks I'm right?
No,
True or false? You guys are like, I don't even want to touch this one with a 10-foot pole because it's false. She's not good at all. Because guess what? I could come back and say, yeah, we're not doing anything as his contract. And now it's day 6. Then let's say the inspection period is over. And she said, yeah, but I sent the addenda. Well, that's lovely. Thanks for sharing. I don't care. We told you we're not doing anything. We'll be expecting you to close. It's an as is contract, guys. As is means you're buying it as is. You can send me any addenda you want. It doesn't, unless it's a release and cancellation, that's the only addenda that matters. So if you have an as is contract and you'd like to send that you want whatever fixed or money or whatever you're asking for, because you'd like to come out of contract and play the as is game, you better send it along with the release and cancellation if that's what your buyers are wanting to do. And then they can choose, do they want to give you what you're asking or do they want to cancel? That's the only way to protect your buyer. Because
You have to be careful with that, because technically, once you deliver the cancellation, it's canceled.
unless they elect to go with the other addenda, you have to give both addenda. And you have to say in the email, please make your choice whether you elect to choose and then your buyer has to be good with it, right? Whether you choose to go with the polybutylene piping and the blah, 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 or whatever you're asking, or if not, then we will be canceling. But you have to send both, because if you don't, guess what? You're continuing to close. That's exactly what happens. Or you can send it in 2 separate emails, one at the beginning of the day and one at the end of the day. But either way, you better make sure you end it by the end of the inspection period. Everybody good on that?
How does that work?
Mhm.
PA and the lender requiring certain things to be taken care of.
Well, if it's an as-is contract, they don't have to do it. So then the buyer would get out with a default from the lender. So they would just get out in the financing contingency. Yeah. Okay, in an as-is contract, whose responsibility is it to take care of open permits? What do you guys think?
The buyer.
Oh, I like that. Keith said it was the seller. Let's look.
No.
I love that. Thank you for playing. This is so much fun. Okay, so let's go to the, oh, I think I passed it. Where is the inspection? Inspection. And so that's financing, title evidence, disclosures. Oh, property inspection. And here we go. Here we go. Seller's assistance and cooperation of building permits. Okay, if the buyer's inspection, whose inspection? The buyer's inspection of the property identifies open or needed permits, the seller shall deliver to the buyer all plans, written documentation, or other information that they have or knowledge of the property, and they shall promptly cooperate in good faith with the buyer's efforts to obtain estimates and repairs, with the buyer's efforts to resolve and cooperate in good faith with their buyer's efforts to get estimates of repairs. And the seller, they have to maybe do anything about necessary to execute authorization of consents or documents, but the seller shall not be required to expend or become obligated to expend any money. So it's actually all on the buyer because it is an as-is contract. Thank you for playing. That was super fun.
And so it's verbiage is different on a standard.
Yes. 150%.
Like if we put it in writing and.
Yeah, that's what we have in the clause about that. Yeah, for
As
sure.
long as it's-
Yeah, or I would put it in at the time of contract. Okay, FERPTA, if it is a foreign seller, and the buyer signs to waive the 15% withholding, who becomes liable if the seller doesn't pay their taxes?
Yes,
I got it.
yes.
Yep, it's gonna go right on that property, guys, so just don't ever let your buyer waive that withholding. All right, true or false? In an escrow dispute, according to section 16 of the contract, dispute resolution, the buyer and the seller have 10 days to resolve their dispute or it will go to mediation. Is that true? I wish so, guys. No, it's not true. The problem is title companies hold escrow now, and they're not party to our contracts. And so what happens is this part of the contract is null. It has to do with whatever the title company you're dealing with, how they handle escrow disputes. So you have to ask the title company what their procedure is for handling an escrow dispute. So if you are the listing agent, do not work with anybody until you know how they handle an escrow dispute. And that's who you pick your title partner. Because if they don't work with you to help figure out who is going to get the money, then don't work with them. I don't care how great and wonderful they seem to be. Because those title companies that send a letter and say, good luck, figure it out amongst yourself, or you're going to have to deal with your own attorneys, they're awful. Okay. And there's a lot of title companies that do that. So I'm going to tell you right now, the days of this are gone. This used to be that way when we'd send it up through escrow disbursement orders with FRAC and all that. Those were good times. That doesn't happen anymore because we don't hold the money anymore. No brokerage wants to hold the money because that's how we get audited by FRAC all the time. So we're not touching it. So we deal with title companies. And again, they're not even governed by FRAC. So I want you to really think about before you choose your title company, ask them, what do you do in the case of an escrow dispute? What is your policy? How do you help take care of that situation? Because we can't talk to the buyer on the other side, and they can't talk to our seller because that's a code of ethics violation. And clearly we didn't work it out because we're in an escrow dispute. We need a third party to assist us. That should be our title partner, but a lot of title partners don't want to get involved. So pick one that does. Everybody good on that? Force majeure. In the event, all time periods are extended up to 10 days after the event, the no longer the prevents the performance. Is that true or false? It's 7. You're right, Flavia. That was changed in October 2001. Used to be 10. It is now 7. Good job, Flavia. In a residential contract, there's 3 areas of inspection, right? General repair, WDO, and permits. If they're all left blank, what is the percentage that the seller has already pre-negotiated? You love your residential contracts, 1.5% for each line item. But it's not that they can be all added up, right? They're all separate. So 1.5 for WDO, 1.5 for general, 1.5 for permits. Everybody clear on that? Right, but if there's no permit, then you didn't get that, right? In a residential contract, is limited roof life considered a defect that seller must repair or replace? Absolutely not. And exactly. So if I have to bring a buyer into a house that has an old roof, am I coming in on a residential contract? Probably not. But if I have a seller that has an old roof, am I going to use a residential contract? All day long. So these are things you got to know, guys, about these contracts, right? Okay, we're almost done. In a residential contract, does all negotiations for repairs need to be completed by the end of the inspection period? So if the inspection period were 10 days, do we need to get, just like an as is, get everything done by that 10-day period? What do you guys think? You think all the negotiations have to be done by 10 days?
We have,
Oh.
we apply to get repair costs.
But that to be completed by then.
Okay, thank you, Mark. No, you just have to send the inspection report, the summary of it by that day. That's it. Then starts the process. The seller gets the estimates. They come back and tell the buyer's agent, this is what needs to be done. And if it's all underneath the what's already been negotiated, guys, you don't even need an addenda because you already have what the inspector sent and it's underneath the repair costs. It's a beautiful thing. That's why the contract is fabulous. If it costs more than that, that's when you come back and you say, okay, these are the costs. This is how much money we've set aside. What do you want us to do? Do you want us to give you a credit? Do you want to pay for some? Do you want us to split some? And if they cannot come to terms, the buyer can cancel and get their money back. So it is a great contract for many reasons. That's why we used it for years before the as-is nonsense. Okay, but there is a place for as-is for sure. Okay, if the seller puts in a counter offer, which I hate those counter offer forms, how long is the window for acceptance?
It's 3 days.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Keith thinks 3. Anybody else have any thoughts?
3 days.
2 days or 48 hours.
It's 2 days. 2
2 days.
days. Yep, 2 days is the answer. But no, let's say you had a listing that you were a residential contract and you forgot to cap the risk of your seller and fill in some numbers under the WDO, general repairs, and open permits, and it was left blank. And then they came in with the counter form and they countered on price and timing, but you forgot you wanted a counter on those things and you didn't do it. You're stuck with that, guys. You're stuck with all the rest of the things in the regular contract. You only countered on whatever those few things were. I hate the counter forms for that reason. I'm always going to tell you, counter on a regular contract, go through the entire contract. It is very easy to miss a couple things, which could be important if you just use the counter form.
So you're saying do a
Don't-
brand new whole contract?
Yes, or I hate it, but scratch and just initial those pieces. I mean, I think that's sloppy. I'd rather do the whole one, but a lot of people will just, cross and then initial. But at least you're thinking through the entire contract. If you're just using the counter form, you're just filling in those things that you want to change, but you might miss something. And I've seen a lot of people miss some really important things when they've used the counter offer form. So my point to you is think twice before you use the counter offer form.
That's for the seller?
The seller would counter back on a counter offer form. Yeah, that's typically what happens. All right, guys, did anybody have fun with our contract? It was fun, right? Okay, well, tomorrow's social media in Lake Nona. We're gonna do some really fun things. I'm excited about that. And then we're gonna have our Ninja Mastery at Lake Nona at 10:45 on Thursday. So I look forward to seeing you guys there. Have a great rest of your day. And Ninja Mastery is also via Zoom. It's in person and Zoom, but social media is not. So thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
Have a great rest of your day, guys.
Thank you.